Comicbook Nation live reaction episode because Star Wars. We didn't see it coming. There's a lot of news hitting right now, but Star Wars has made some big announcements. So here today on this bonus episode breakdown of Comicbook Nation is my regular co-host, Connor Casey.
What up?
And one of our Star Wars horror all-around experts of all thing fandom, Mr. Patrick Kavanaugh is here, and I think it's your first time in a long time, so it's nice to have you back.
Yeah, also, what up?
All right, guys, so let's jump into it. So we just got the news. You know, things have been relatively, I would say, like murky for people who spend a lot of time covering Star Wars content on this site. Things have been kind of relatively murky in the film side. We've kind of known what was happening on the TV side for a while, but on the film side, there's been this kind of question. We've had a couple projects up in the air. Now we just got a big announcement that's kind of a game changer, which is that we are going to get, instead of the Mandalorian season 4, this was another big question on the TV side, what was going to happen for season 4 of the Mandalorian. We are going to be getting a Mando and Grogu movie, which has been announced as being in development. Yeah, Connor, I want to shoot to you first because I know you and I spent some of our regular time on Comic Book Nation, which subscribe to us on video and your podcast platforms and go back to listen to our whole Mandalorian season 3 breakdown. I know you had strong feelings about season 3, where it left things off and what we should maybe be doing with season 4. So I'm always curious, how is this news hitting you, man?
So I am known as the cynical yet handsome bastard on this show. And whenever the topic of Star Wars movies comes up, I basically push it to the side and say, yeah, I'll believe it when I'm sitting in the theater and it's playing in front of me. I saw the memes from a few months ago when we were supposed to get Rogue Squadron and a lot of the posts of, what'd y'all think of the movie? And never forget what they took from us. The whole process of any time there's an announcement when it comes to a Star Wars film lately has just been, this might happen, it might not happen. I remember all the excitement around the Taika Waititi stuff. I don't see any mention of that in here. I know the whole Dave Filoni, hey, I'm going to combine all of the Disney Plus series into one climactic film. That is mentioned right at the end of this, that there is still something in production with that. There's also the James Mangold thing that got mentioned. But as for this, as you know, I was not over the moon with how Mando season 3 kind of went off the rails, especially in the latter half. And when this got announced, my first question was, so are we getting this instead of season 4? Is this season 4? And they just said, you know what? The scale of this is big enough that we can just shorten it up, make it its own movie, put it out because, hey, Star Wars hasn't had a movie in a while. To me, if this is, and I was talking about this with producer Rich before we started rolling. This reminds me of when you have an anime that is ongoing, and in between seasons, they release a theatrical movie. It's standalone story. You can watch it by itself. It doesn't necessarily, you don't even necessarily have to know about the show to enjoy the movie. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe it's just, hey, we need a Star Wars film. Let's put something out. What do people like? They like Mandalorian. They certainly like Grogu. Let's just make that the title and go.
Sorry, I didn't know you were going to stop there. I think there were some big questions surrounding that. It's also, I think, another one of our regular fans, Damon, expressed, which was my first question in this, is this the same as the Filoni movie, we heard?
They were very economical in what they announced. If you look at how they structure each sentence, they specifically say Filoni has a movie in production along with Ahsoka season 2, and it's not this because this is Favreau.
There we go. So let's get that straight first. And yes, that was the other big buildup on the TV side. It looks like we are getting Ahsoka season 2, which I have been, all over the place over the holidays, but I thought that was still something that was kind of up in the air. Yes, no, Patrick, you keep up with Star Wars news for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big thing was just the last year's strikes. Not only could the actors not talk about it and not work on it, there couldn't be any sort of meetings, any sort of discussions about it. So Ahsoka, just like Book of Boba Fett, just like season 1 of The Mandalorian. It's just all billed as a limited series and sort of like Connor mentioned along the lines of a movie until it's actually officially confirmed, until there's photos, until there's teasers, trailers. Like you really don't have any idea what's going on. And I mean, even Rosario Dawson recently kind of said like, yeah, we haven't had any talks about it because the strikes and because the holidays. And even something being not even, Lucasfilm Disney announcing that it's in development doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come to fruition, because a lot of people had assumed a season 4 of The Mandalorian was going to happen. And even if Lucasfilm hadn't officially announced a season 4, it seems like this is going to take the place of season 4. And we, of course, can't rule out, 5 years down the line that there will still be a season 4 until, production actually starts on the volume. We don't really know if it's definitively going to happen, because another pandemic could happen. Another strike could happen. Like, we don't know what is going to prevent and see Lucasfilm reevaluate all their plans.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the Connor Casey, like, don't believe it until you're in the theater, and sometimes don't even believe it when you're in the theater if it's like a Zack Snyder movie, right? But, there's another big question. This is why I love doing this live, because, we do this for a living, but you guys in the crowd, the wisdom of the crowd is always beneficial here. What do you adjust things for a Mandalorian movie starring Pedro Pascal to actually have him taking off this helmet and doing this, or do you go the Dread route and just keep the character consistent? Do you think that will throw people, or do you think Mando's big enough that people know the deal and like are just gonna kind of come to it for the character more than the Pedro of it all?
Personally, I kind of agree with Connor in that anime is a good comparison, but I also compare it to MCU. That, like, whether it's a movie, whether it's a TV show, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where it screens. It doesn't matter where it premieres. It's just MCU chapter 75. Like, it's just, here's new content in this franchise. And I feel like that's what Star Wars has really been suffering from lately. Like, whether it is the Book of Boba Fett, whether it is Ahsoka, whether it's Mandalorian season 3, it just keeps being, here's the next thing, and we're going to pretend like you don't need to know anything, but you're only going to care if you do know stuff. Like Ahsoka, I don't know anyone who didn't know about Rebels that was invested in that show or was super enthusiastic about that show. That's not to say that the show was bad or underwhelming or anything like that, but it's like, I don't know anyone who wasn't familiar with Mandalorian, wasn't familiar with Rebels. So, like, people who don't know the Mandalorian are not going to go see the Mandalorian and Grogu. No matter what Pedro says in press interviews, no matter what Favreau says, people aren't going to care about this movie unless they have watched every season of The Mandalorian or every season of Star Wars content. And it's just, I'm really apprehensive. I've loved Andor because that actually feels like a thing that doesn't need to be Star Wars to still be riveting content. And that's from how the story came together. That is just the production of it. That, like, if they're just going to film this thing in the volume and it's just going to feel like restrained and economical, I don't see why this is going to be worthy of a big screen treatment. I'll be cautiously optimistic, but there's no way you're going to get butts in seats that aren't Star Wars butts, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know if how much this has as a new attraction play at this point. Connor, I need a cynical view for a minute here, so I'm going to throw to you. We got Pedro Pascal, right? One of the most in-demand kind of actors right now. He's still got The Last of Us. We still have some unresolved stuff in the Marvel camp that could be taking up his time, quite possibly. Then he's still playing Mando. Do you think this is a send-off, or do you guys truly feel like this is just anime kind of feature filler in between arc Or do you think this could be the end for him?
I don't think it's the end for him. As far as the big question of whether or not he is in the suit and he is on set the whole time, I think voiceover takes only about a week to do at most, and filming an entire movie can take quite a bit longer than that. And this dude, as you mentioned, has quite a full schedule right now. So my bet is that if we see him without the helmet, it's one scene like it's been in previous seasons. And for the rest of it, he's not on set. Someone else is in that suit. He's doing the voice after the fact. And that's fine. But you want to talk cynical. This almost kind of feels cynical in its pitch. It's, hey, based on our metrics from sales and Disney Plus, we know that you like Grogu, so we're going to make sure he's in it. We're going to put him in the title. Y'all watch Mandalorian. We know that for a fact. So that's the sales pitch is, hey, you like Mandalorian? Here's more of it. It's on the big screen this time. Whether or not it's on actual sets as opposed to the volume is its own question. I'm really hoping that they get out of the volume, because I think we've seen enough of it to know that you can really tell just how confined of a space they're operating in with all the screens surrounding them. So I'd like to see them get out, get into some jungles, go to some sand places, go nuts with the location shooting, because we've seen enough of, hey, you and about 10 feet in front of you is real and the rest of it's fake. We can tell. I'm leaning more towards this is anime filler. I think that whatever Filoni has planned for his ultimate film that combines all of this, the dangling plot threads from Ahsoka and what he's doing with Mando, I think it kind of needs Mando to be at the center of it.
I am on the opposite. I'm not necessarily cynical. I just have a Joker style level of humor. And so, like, I think that it's been a long time, and I've been saying this about the MCU, that it needs to get dangerous again. Like, nothing feels dangerous. So, like, that was like my whole thing with replacing Kang with the Council of Reeds and all that stuff that you can go listen to on that podcast. But here, I think that I'm with some of the people in the comments that I would almost think this could be a good death epic for Din. Grogu survives. Din dies, though. I think it's been a long time since Star Wars hit us with like a real Empire Strikes Back level kind of twist, non-happy ending type deal. And if you want to make, and I think we've all been kind of down talking the Disney Plus series as feeling like they don't have stakes, like they're not epic or grand enough and all that. Well, brother, this would make people sit up and take notice, and it definitely would put butts in seats, from the hardcore Star Wars butts to the mainstream people who watch just The Mandalorian and stuff like that. That would make them do it. I think there's room to do it, because I think the show in its arc, I think season 3 proved already that they may be running out of steam there. And they've already started to throw to like Bo-Katan and other things about what the Mandalorian kind of like means. So I think this would be a good time to take out somebody like Din, give this Filoni movie real stakes, and have it be like, oh no, we got to go. It's not just we're riding against like Thrawn or whatever. It's like, we got to go get payback. They took one of ours, we're taking all of theirs. America loves a gang war. So I think I think it could be that.
I'm all for them going into a more dangerous route. I think if you look at everything that has come out post the Disney merger, people talk about Rogue One, they obviously talk about Andor, and those were products that did have a bit of an edge to them. The problem is that the same brain trust that created the Mandalorian from the start, people like Filoni, people like Favreau, all their hands are still in this. So if the leadership hasn't changed, if the creative direction hasn't changed, I've seen nothing that tells me, oh, these are the guys that are going to suddenly make this edgy.
People have said Bo-Katan could get taken out. That's more of an economical choice, right? You take out Katie Sackhoff's Bo-Katan, who also needs to have her arc kind of wrapped up in the franchise before we get to a lot of later stuff. So, that would shock people too. Thrawn slowly choking Grogu would also maybe get people off his back about not being scary enough.
You want to be dangerous? Kill Ezra.
Oh, wow. That would just Nah, man, stop it. We just went through a whole thing to get him back.
Too
Let's
bad.
talk before we
I
wrap.
mean-
We got to move over. Patrick, you're on board for the Kill Ezra campaign. It sounds
No,
like.
I just want to say that I feel like there's been a big divide in the storytelling in the Disney Star Wars between giving fans what they want and giving fans what they need. And ever since like they brought back Luke Skywalker for season 2 of Mandalorian, that has been Disney leaning into giving fans what they quote unquote want, which is things that they recognize. Ahsoka was full of, hey, it's that character you like, and they're back. And, you know, I don't think Disney wants to kill off characters because they feel like, look at all the content, look at all of the engagements we're generating by the return of a character. And so they've been so much more focused on bringing things back, bringing characters to life, referencing things that are familiar, as opposed to telling stories that these characters need. Because Ezra died already, and that was like one of the last, impactful deaths of the Disney Star Wars era, and that was 6 years ago now. And so like that was one of the last meaningful, impactful, earned, authentic, genuine send-offs to a character that has now been undone because they could get the volume, they could cast Ezra, they could sell some more toys. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be about bringing people back. I think it's going to be about like making serious stakes for any of these stories, and to not do it inauthentically, not do it just because it's, hey, we're going to kill off Kylo Ren. Everyone knows we're going to kill off this character that you've only known for 4 or 5 years. Like, give us something that is an authentic, earned, compelling story, like Andor did, and make these stories have stakes because they are shrouded in a Star Wars skin, if you will.
Before we got to wrap, we got to talk about Ahsoka season 2, which is just the footnote of both to this live reaction podcast and to the article that inspired it. I'm weirdly kind of like optimistic that if they do this, I mean, obviously there's so much stuff that's already back in the main. Ahsoka literally split these into 2 universes, right? So like in the main universe, you got now this Grogu Mando movie, Filoni movie happening. But is Ahsoka season 2 possibly like our real first time to kind of break out into something new and different relatively within Star Wars if we just go back and focus on what's going on what is it, Peridia in like that other universe?
Here's my hot take.
Oh,
Star
boy, here we
Wars
go.
will not be able to move on unless it goes past episode 9 or way the hell in the past to the Old Republic, to where it is fair
Which
game.
we're
and
doing
you're
both.
able you don't have to mess with Skywalkers. You don't have to mess with Palpatine or the First Order, because all of these products that are coming out that are set between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, the problem is that they're all running into the brick wall that is episode 9 sucked. You have to get past it. So you got to move away from that, set it in another galaxy, set it outside of that specific time period from episode 1 to episode 9. That's how this franchise moves the hell on.
Yeah, and we are doing that. Mentioned in the article is also that, yes, they're still going forward with this James Mangold story, which was supposed to be, the first kind of rise of the Jedi Order and things like that. And then we have Charmin Obaid-Chinoy, who is going to be doing the Ray movie. So we are or the movie about the next Jedi Order featuring Ray and possibly Teen Grogu, as people are saying they want to see in the comments, right? Talk about Patrick's comeback theory of Star Wars. There you go. So we are doing that. We are getting to the bookends. We also have the Acolyte. Damon pointed out the Acolyte's still on its way, which is supposed to be late High Republic, which the High Republic itself, a lot of you guys don't jump into that, but I do, has kind of done this weird Star Wars like main story, prequel story, sequel story kind of arc also. So I'm kind of still interested about like really what's going on there. But I think that, yeah, Ahsoka season 2, I would just like them. First of all, as always in Star Wars, as Connor just pointed out, we're always at a deficit these days, which is a weird thing to be in a franchise, which is like, okay, we're not starting out telling a new story. We're going to make up for all this stuff we didn't do right before, which is already there's a fair amount of that in Ahsoka season 2. We got to maybe actually take time and, make Sabine an actual Jedi, and get to the heart of that, which could be really cool because I think that episode with Hayden Christensen and all that was kind of really good. We could get into more of that kind of stuff. We could get into some ancient lore and new stuff that we can do. But again, we're still at a deficit when you want to be kind of realistic about it. We're still going to be kind of filling in and making up for stuff that we haven't done before, which I can already feel, Patrick, kind of like, I feel like you're shaking your head and just kind of groaning under your breath over there.
No, I mean, it's of all the movies that were previously announced, like the Dave Filoni thing was the least exciting to me. And, the Dawn of the Jedi probably conceptually was the most interesting to me, because just saying like, this is literally 1,000 years ago, sort of like Rings of Power did to Lord of the Rings. Like, no, you're not going to see, someone shouting off screen like, oh, hey, Bilbo, good to see you. I'll meet up with you later. Like, that stuff is not going to happen. So I think you have to give the audience this preconceived, like built-in knowledge of this is not just going to be Easter egg fest. Like, this is going to be a story worthy of being told. I thought, something like Rogue Squadron, just by formula, just by concept, like that wouldn't have been about Luke Skywalker. It would have taken place in, the margins of something familiar. And I think that's why things like Rogue One, I think that's why something like Andor is successful, is because it takes place in the margins and you can sort of dip your hand into, iconography that's familiar while the audience is drawn in by that. And then you deliver this riveting story with compelling characters that aren't riveting just because you know them. They're riveting because the writing and the direction and the plot actually shows why they're so riveting. So I'm not super hopeful for anything that leans into what we already know, whether that's Ahsoka season 2, whether that's Thrawn. Like, for as cool as all this stuff is, I feel like they're really overusing that, leaning on that as a crutch. And I just want to see stories that are worth being told, that deserve to be on the big screen or deserve to have 8 episodes of a TV series, as opposed to, well, we know we'll get engagement. We know we can sell toys. We know we can do branded content and continue to build the brand. And yeah.
All right. Well, final question, because we're going to get out of here now. But with Ahsoka season 2, there is the massive hurdle of Baylan Skoll and Ray Stevenson's passing. What do you do with this character at this point? I mean, he's so popular now that I think you can't just ignore it. I mean, I guess for me, recasting is pretty much what you got to do at this point.
Get Russell Crowe on the phone and recast him.
Okay, Patrick?
I think they're going to do, Poochie with Itchy and Scratchy, and it's just going to be Baylan Skoll died on the way to his home planet, and that's going to be it. And just, have Grogu hold up a sign saying that, and audience will be happy, because they'll be like, more Grogu. Who cares about, the tragic passing of this fantastic actor and what that means? Like, no, just throw something else in there that'll distract people from that character, and they'll be happy to move on.
Okay, and there you have it. That's where we're going to leave it. This is our live reactions to the news that we are getting a Mando and Grogu movie plus Ahsoka Season 2. I am Kofi Outlaw, the host of Comicbook Nation, and this has been my co-host Connor Casey and our Star Wars expert, Mr. Patrick Kavanaugh. Be sure to subscribe to Comicbook Nation. We are the only show that does it all for geek culture and the official podcast of Comicbook.com. And every week we have multiple episodes focusing on all the biggest things in fandom. So check us out on your podcast platform and our YouTube page. Thank you guys for joining in, and we'll see you guys out there in Star Wars land. Peace.
Later.